Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nora. Before I begin today's story, I want to ask you for one small favor. If you enjoy real-life stories, emotional journeys, and moments that stay with you long after the video ends, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and make sure you watch this video until the very end. Every like and comment truly helps more than you know. What I'm about to share isn't easy for me. It's not something I've ever spoken about openly. And every time I think about it, a strange heaviness settles in my chest, one that never really goes away. This is a chapter of my life I wish I could rewrite. But some memories refuse to be erased. There are moments from our past that don't fade with time. Instead, they grow sharper, more vivid, almost as if life is determined to make sure we never forget them. This story is one of those moments for me. It began years ago, when I was 18 years old, living with my family in Italy. Italy was beautiful, romantic even. Narrow streets soaked in history, golden sunsets spilling over old buildings, and a sense that every corner held a secret. Back then, I thought I was living a perfect life. From the outside, it certainly looked that way. My family was well off. We lived comfortably. There was no shortage of anything material. My father was a successful businessman, known for his discipline and ambition. My mother was an interior designer, elegant and creative, always surrounded by fabrics, colors, and sketches. They were both deeply invested in their careers, but despite their demanding schedules, they never neglected me. At least, not in the way people usually think of neglect. They provided everything: education, security, opportunity. Our home was warm, stable, and structured. I never worried about tomorrow. But love? Love is complicated. I wasn't an only child. I had two older twin brothers, Joseph and Anthony. They were 2 years older than me, and from as far back as I can remember, they were my world. If I had to describe Joseph and Anthony in one word, it would be protective. But that word alone doesn't do them justice. They weren't just older brothers. They were my shield, my safe place, my constant. While my parents showed love through responsibility and provision, Joseph and Anthony expressed love through presence and action. If I needed something, they noticed before I even asked. If I was upset, they knew, even when I tried to hide it. And if I was hurt, emotionally or otherwise, they were already standing in front of me, ready to defend. Growing up, I never questioned their devotion. To me, it was natural. It was all I had ever known. When I was younger, I used to follow them everywhere. They'd pretend to complain, but I could always tell they loved it. I was their little shadow, as Joseph used to joke. At school, things weren't always easy for me. There were days when classmates mocked me, my clothes, my appearance, the way I spoke. I wasn't particularly confident, and I often came home with tears burning behind my eyes. But I never stayed silent for long. Joseph and Anthony were always the first to notice something was wrong. I didn't need to explain. They could read it on my face, in the way my shoulders slumped, in the quiet way I entered the house. One particular memory still stands out. I had come home crying after some kids at school made fun of a dress I wore. I tried to brush it off, pretending it didn't matter. But Joseph saw through me immediately. They didn't just comfort me. The very next day, they went to my school. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't use violence. They didn't make a scene. Instead, they spoke calmly, firmly, with a cold seriousness that left no room for misunderstanding. After that day, no one ever bothered me again. To a young girl, that kind of protection feels heroic. And to me, they were exactly that, heroes. At home, family evenings were common. We'd sit together in the living room, watching television or sharing meals. But no matter where everyone else sat, I always squeezed myself between Joseph and Anthony. They'd laugh and pretend to argue over who got to sit closer to me. "She's my little princess," Anthony would say. "No, she's mine," Joseph would reply. And then they'd both wrap their arms around me, joking about how it was their lifelong responsibility to protect me from the world. At the time, it felt comforting, safe, warm. I didn't see anything strange in it, because nothing about my childhood had taught me to question affection. As I grew into my teenage years, my insecurities grew with me. I struggled with my appearance. I compared myself to others constantly, feeling like I never quite measured up. That's when my brothers became my emotional anchors. Anthony, who had always been more patient, would sit with me in the evenings and show me simple makeup tricks, not to change how I looked, but to make me feel confident. "You don't need this," he'd say softly, handing me a makeup brush. "But if it makes you feel better, that's what matters." Joseph, on the other hand, loved fashion. He'd help me choose outfits, hyping me up every time I stepped in front of the mirror. "You're the cutest little sister in the world," he'd say without hesitation. Their words mattered to me more than anyone else's. More than compliments from friends. More than reassurance from my parents. Because coming from them, it felt real. With my parents often busy, Joseph and Anthony naturally became the ones who were always there. They drove me to school, helped me with homework, made sure I never felt alone. At night, if I couldn't sleep, I'd knock on their door without fear. They never turned me away. Not once. Sometimes they'd tell me stories, silly ones, dramatic ones, stories about their dreams for the future. Other times, they'd simply sit quietly beside me until I drifted off to sleep. Those moments built a belief deep inside me. I believed their love for me was stronger than anything else in my life. Stronger than my parents' love. Stronger than friendship. Stronger than anything I could imagine losing. And that belief would later become the most fragile thing I ever held. Looking back now, I realize something important. When you grow up surrounded by affection, you don't always learn where boundaries are supposed to exist. You assume closeness is harmless. You assume love is always safe. I was the youngest. I was carefree. And I never feared being reprimanded for being affectionate. I hugged them often. I leaned against them. I acted without hesitation, because I trusted them completely. Joseph and Anthony weren't just my brothers. They were my best friends. And because of that, I never felt shy, never felt guarded, never imagined there could be a line, let alone one I could cross without realizing it. At that time, my world was simple, or at least I believed it was. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that even the purest relationships can change in a single moment. A moment so small it feels insignificant at first. A moment that doesn't make sense right away. A moment that stays with you forever. And that moment began on a quiet afternoon, on a warm summer day. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this part. Your support truly means everything. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me in the next part where everything begins to change.